Well, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of Canadian women's national team news to talk about this week, which means that we're going to have to, go back to fully covering Toronto FC and Waking the Red Weekly presented by Footy Talks. And right now, that's not the most fun thing in the world, but nonetheless, my name is Mitchell Tierney, and thankfully, we at least get to chat some Canadian Championship as well on this week's show with Benedict Rhodes, who of KMPL.ca, who will be joining us in just about 15 minutes or so, plus some updates from Benny on our National League as a whole. But first, as always, it's Michael Singh, it's Jeffrey P. Nesker. How are we feeling, gentlemen?
Benny of CanPL.ca? Dang. That's got a ring to it, eh, man? I like it. I like it. Benny moving up on the world. I'm excited to chat with him. Not excited to chat about some TFC because, I feel like that's just been the motto this entire year is, as I think we were talking about this like before the show, it's just sad times with Toronto FC right now. But I mean, we'll get into more of it soon. Jeff, what's going on, my guy? How you doing today?
A little bit of technical difficulties off the hop. It's like a wet armpit in my apartment today, so I'm gonna try to hang out with you guys.
What does that even mean?
I won't melt.
A wet armpit? Like, what does that even mean? What are you trying to describe there?
What do you think it means? Think about
it's like humid.
Yeah.
Very humid.
Message received.
I got you.
I only caught maybe a good 5 minutes of the pre-show ramble, but Jeff spent most of it dabbing his forehead, so I think that's unfortunately what he's going to have to be dealing with. Jeff's playing through the heat this week, but Toronto FC, let's just get into it. Unfortunately, another loss, this time for the first time this year at BMO Field, and another late loss this time to the New England Revolution, of course, the league leading team. Obviously, some takeaways from this game. Tajon Buchanan, absolute banger! What a goal he scored during this game, and a nice little homecoming for him. But of course, another late mistake from Toronto FC, and they leave all of the points. That's now 4 points from 5 games at BMO Field this season. That's obviously not good enough when, I think the return home was what we were all hoping would be the turning point for this season.
Yeah, I think you said it right there, Mitch. It's not good enough.
Let me put a little bit of a positive spin on this. Obviously, at this point in the season, results is all that matter, right? But I think we can all agree that whatever version of TFC we saw on Saturday night, so much better than where it was at the beginning of the season. And even like at the midway point of the season. Obviously the bar was really low then. So like I hope it's better. But they quite honestly, they outplayed New England Revolution. Like you guys said, the best team in Major League Soccer right now. A team that entered that game 5 wins, 1 draw in their last 6. And quite frankly, they played them off the park. So, there's little things that they have to fix. But at the end of the day, like that is a positive performance. But as I tweeted out, honestly, it's a little bit too late for moral victories, right?
Yep.
At this point in the season, like all that really matters, and they'll be the first to tell you this, is that they need 3 points. And what can they do now to turn those, even of late, just positive performances now into 3 points? And that's the $1 million question I think everyone's searching for right now.
Yeah.
Right.
I disagree. Far be it for me to mention the Club Leon game, but we did pretty good at the beginning of the season. So, in the MLS we didn't, but certainly off the top of playing games in earnest, we did all right. So I don't know anymore. I don't think we played them off the park. Usually playing a team off the park involves 3 points. So I think we got to be careful with our language here, because we're starting to be like unfettered cheerleaders for moral victories and this and that and this. The
results aside, though, Jeff.
Well, I mean,
yeah, of course. Like I said, it all comes down to results.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can put results aside. I mean,
okay,
you know what I mean? Like putting results aside, we don't have any results. Like it becomes kind of a fool's errand in my mind. Like you said, moral victories are meaningless at this point. You know, talking about the coulda, shoulda, woulda are meaningless at this point. Like if
there's no point in even watching the games. Just
no. Of course I'm gonna watch the games, of course. But I mean, in terms of going into like a detailed dissertation about how we coulda, shoulda won the game, that's over now. I mean, we gotta hunker down and win some games, or I don't know. This is my disappointment talking, but
I hear you. That's honestly the frustration that's stemming around all of TFC Live. It's all stemming around the locker room. It's stemming around from us, man. Like TFC at this point, they're not a last place team in Major League Soccer, but they are a last place team. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, I mean, you're right, Jeff. At the end of the day, they need to find a way to turn those performances into 3 points. But there's still 90 minutes of soccer for us to dissect. And I think, in my opinion, at least, you know, possession in that game was like 65 to 35% TFC. They outchanced New England Revolution, and quite frankly, if it wasn't for another two slip-ups at the back, you know, TFC would have 3 points, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, we've been saying that so many times this season. If it wasn't for this little mistake, if it wasn't for this giveaway, and it hasn't changed and it hasn't gotten better, it you know, maybe they've been doing it less, but still not enough that they're able to get points out of the games. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that that at this point, you know, it's tough to talk like that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll put it into a microcosm. Like, you know, when people are saying, well, we're not Cincinnati. I mean, put your 2021 glasses on. We're worse than Cincinnati, right? Like, we've got to start maybe being a bit more realistic about where this team is at, right? And I think that goes along the roster. And I know everybody doesn't want me to talk about the elephant in the room, so I won't until someone else brings it up. But I think we're an island of misfit toys. We have a lot of bad deals on the books. We all are everybody that was aging on the roster got bit by Father Time at just about the exact same instant. It's difficult. I mean, that rebuild that was in the mail is here now. So it's time to start thinking seriously about what we're going to look like in 2022, 2021, 22. What is time? Next
2022,
season.
Yeah. There's the MLS seasons are just 1 year.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it doesn't feel like it, Mitch. It feels like they're about 1,000 years long. But
I don't know, man.
Fair,
I don't know, Jeff. That seems a bit reactionary, a bit knee jerk. Like, for me, if we're having this conversation based on, you know, the whole duration of the season, then, you know, yeah, of course. Like, how can you argue that the performances aren't there? But at the same time, like, we can't be basing this conversation off the last game they just played, because that was one of their best performances of the season, despite not getting the result. And yes, we keep having the same conversation about them not getting the result, but I don't think we can actually back that up quite often with their performances. This feels like one of the few times this season we can actually say, come away from that game, say, hey, TFC deserved better that game. I don't know if I'm alone in that boat, but I strongly feel that way. And I think that was genuinely a step in the right direction. That being said, is that step too late? Now, Jeff, you were here for my ramble last week about what's next now for TFC. These next 11 out of their 15, you know, upcoming games are against teams that are not in a playoff spot. They're against the likes of an Atlanta United, Inter Miami, FC Cincinnati, Chicago. You know, there is still, you know, potential here that TFC have to, you know, TFC could go on a run. And, like, if there is a time for them to go on a run, like, now, there's no better time than now. But at the same time, like, this week's going to be crucial for them because they're facing two teams that are not in a playoff spot that they need to get points against. So, I mean, I'm not willing to sit here and write them off completely yet, but we're definitely getting to that point the more and more that we come away from games disappointed.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I mean, they have 4 games coming up against teams that they have to directly leapfrog in the Eastern Conference standings. Obviously, as you mentioned, 2 of them this week against, I believe, the 9th and 12th place team in the Eastern Conference. If they don't get at least 1 win this week, it's over.
It's over.
Like there's no question. They have to pick up at least 1 win and probably at least 4 points from these games. So this week and the next 4, if there was ever a way back in, it's been handed to them. They have that opportunity. There's so many 6-point games, to use I guess hockeyism, over the next couple weeks, but they have to take them, and there's no more opportunity here. This is your chance, and you've got to take it. So obviously a massive week for Toronto FC. Let's get to Benedict. Let's move on to the Canadian Championship again. A more exciting topic right now as that competition once again gets underway after a year off. So let's bring on Benny here.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, now joined by friend of the show, CanPL.ca writer, known Steph Labbe impersonator, Benedict Rhodes. How you doing, Benny?
Mr. Big Time.
I'm doing good, guy. How you guys doing?
I'm hot. I'm a little humid, but
I can see that.
Yeah,
got like a sweaty armpit.
Benny's a good guest. He watched the first part of the show here.
Always.
Benny, first of all, Mr. Big Time, Trap Money Bunny. Come on. Tell people about your ascension, man. How's life been at the Canadian Premier League since departing our grounds here at Wake in the Red, man?
Yeah, I don't go as far as saying it's an ascension, but I went on loan for a little bit. Canadian Premier League has been pretty awesome. Been blessed with that opportunity. Working with some other Wake in the Red people, of course, as well, Charlie and Brady, among others, and it's been awesome. Couldn't have gone better, I don't think, and can be sticking around a little bit longer, thankfully.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Awesome. Yeah, he gets to not cover Toronto FC for a little bit longer. So lucky him.
He picked a good time to dip. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. But Benny, let's get into why we brought you on, which is, of course, the Canadian Premier League and the Canadian Championship as a whole. And obviously, it's back for 2021, and we've already seen a game with Cavalry beating FC Edmonton. I guess obviously that's the only game we have anything to take away from so far, but what did we learn about the Cavs in this game? And obviously a team that have made noise in this competition before. So what did you take away from that win?
Did you hear us?
Sorry, I caught the last part of the question there.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't hear the question?
Missed the last part of the question.
Missed the last part. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no worries. I guess just Cavalry, obviously a team that's made some noise in this competition before. What did we take away from their first game this year?
Yeah, they looked really good against FC Edmonton. I think maybe my hot take coming out of this is maybe they have one of the top defenses in Canada of any team at any level. No, it's not a shot at Toronto FC, I promise, but
it is.
It sounded like a shot at TSC.
Krifiao, it's like he could start for CF Montreal right now if they wanted him to. David Norman Jr. looks like he's a very good player. He's a midfielder generally, but dropping back into center back looks really good. Dan Klump, I think, is MLS level. I think he's maybe the best defender in the Canadian Premier League. Mo Farsi, we all know about his ability over the last year or so, and that team just didn't let anything happen. Marco Carducci behind them as well in goal is obviously very good. So that team is very defensively sound, and I think if you play like the way they did against FC Edmonton, you could beat maybe any team in this competition.
That segues into my question. So you think Cavs are deep enough to make a run in this comp? And do you think they're joined by any other CPL team?
Yeah, I think they definitely have a chance. I think they have been bit a little bit by the injury bug, as a few CPL teams have. But if you look at the bracket, like they play the winner of the Pacific FC and the Whitecaps. So they've beaten the Whitecaps before, of course. They've beaten Pacific several times over the years. Kevin, I'm not going to answer that. Why not Cavalry go on another run, though? I think it's definitely possible.
Yeah, okay. But Benny, last night, Pacific, absolutely playing Valor off the field there, eh? Are they the best team right now in the Canadian Premier League?
Yeah, I think so. I think if they play Cavalry on Friday, and that could be a big indicator of who's the best team in this league. They're first and second. Pacific goes 7 points clear with a win in that game, which would obviously be a huge lead at this point in the season. I certainly wouldn't bet against Pacific. They're healthy. They're obviously very good. They have maybe the best player in the CPL in Marco Bustos, so that's definitely possible that they're the best team in the CPL.
Yeah, he's got the Pacific Issei kit in the background. I can see that.
So. Yeah. It's one of a kind. It's a one of a kind kit because of the name set. But yeah, I mean that's interesting, Ben, because this season, year 3 for the CPL. I mean, year 2.5 if we count the island games and all the pandemic shenanigans. Would you agree with my assessment that we're starting to see some of the coaches that played the long game in the league, such as Rob Gale and maybe the Pacific Association, come to fruition? Teams that didn't necessarily have the head start of like Foothills and or Sigma FC to hit the ground running. And to me, this is positive because it means that our league is evolving in a way that sort of reflects the natural order of things. But I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's probably maybe fair to say all 7 or 8 teams, if you want to include Ottawa, have looked better than in their first season on paper and in practice, I guess. I think the best example of it is Pacific. Some of their young players they had in 2019 and 2020 are now key players for them. And then they've sort of supplemented that with big signings like Marco Bustos and some sort of key additions, which sort of move them from a good young team into a good team that can win right now.
Awesome.
Yeah, Benny, get back to the Canadian Championship a little bit from a Toronto FC perspective. They'll play the winner of the, I guess you can call it, Toronto area, matchup, part of the bracket between Masters Football Academy and York United. What can you tell us about both of those teams and what Toronto FC can expect from that matchup in general and their first opponent?
Yeah, don't know a ton about Masters, but I do know they have a couple of names that may be familiar to some people, like Akeem Priestley is a 36-year-old former Jamaica international playing on the wing for them. And if anyone watched the early days of TFC, you might know the name Joey Mello.
Oh, yeah.
He played for them in 2007 a couple of times. And so their team is maybe a little bit older for League One Ontario, but they seem to want to win now. They won the last edition of League One Ontario in 2019. So they're maybe the toughest opponent from League One Ontario that York could have faced. And then York have a lot of League One alumni on their team, and their young team made up of these sort of guys who've graduated from League One Ontario. So I think both teams will be up for this match and wanting to beat the other one, and the spot against Toronto FC, which is, I think, what fans in the GTA have wanted for a long time is a York or League One Ontario team to face Toronto FC.
Yeah, I've always been impressed by, I guess it's a 1-year sample size, but the League One teams and even the PLSQ teams, like they did very well against the CanPL opposition, which I think worried everyone a little bit because it was like, what's the level of the CanPL? And then obviously we saw how the CanPL did against MLS teams. So I think it's pretty clear that the Canadian pyramid as a whole has a lot of talent in it. And speaking to some of the players on Masters, Canadian international, if I'm not incorrect, Jamie Peters has just started playing for them. He's a player who's been out of the game for a little bit, but played almost 100 times for Ipswich Town back in the day as 21 Canada caps. So there's the level of talent that you can find throughout this tournament. So certainly something to watch out for.
Yeah. Ben, what's your favorite thing about the tournament? Like, following the FA Cup over across the pond, it's got to be fun seeing the Voyageurs Cup sort of become a wider tournament that includes more of the lower leagues and lower divisions and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned the FA Cup. I think it's our FA Cup, I guess, here in Canada, and it's always cool to see teams from leagues that maybe don't often play against each other face off against each other. Like you've seen Blainville a couple times, and then as we get to, I'm sure. And then it's always interesting to see League One Ontario teams. There's not really a way to watch League One Ontario, but get to see them play against a CPL team and kind of give these players a chance to maybe prove that they belong on a CPL roster, or CPL players prove they belong on an MLS roster, for example.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because as we were saying in our group Slack, League One Ontario isn't broadcast on YouTube, so this may be the only opportunity for people that don't go to the games physically to see these teams in action. So it's a good shop window for them as well. Yeah, that's a very, very good point.
All right, Benny, kind of shifting the subject a little bit, I gotta ask, man, what's it like working under Christian Jack, the direction of KJ? Obviously, friend of the show. Feel free to take any jabs at him you want. I'm sure he won't see any of this.
Yeah, I won't take any jabs at him. But it's obviously really cool. You know, someone we've all watched over the last few years, or many years, I guess, on soccer here in Canada, and to be able to work alongside him and be on a podcast with him, of course, as well, has been really, really cool, and definitely not taking that for granted.
Yeah, any words of wisdom he's offered you, or are you gonna keep that in house, Benny?
Get some sleep, probably, because Benny's been like up 24/7 with the Olympics and all the stuff he's had to cover for both campaigns. But I didn't want to answer for
sleep is for the weak.
Yeah.
Nothing too prophetic from KJ, but just day-to-day learning stuff from him and the other people there as well. Of course, Marty, Charlie, and Brady, and everyone else behind the scenes as well. It's a great learning opportunity.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, Benny, I think that does it for us. Thank you so much for coming on the show this week. And certainly.
Oh, I got one last question. If related. Do you think a CPL team is going to pull an upset this year? And if they do, will we put an asterisk on it, the dreaded COVID asterisk? And do you think that's fair?
I want to say no asterisk, but I think Pacific FC versus Vancouver Whitecaps is going to be a game to watch. A lot of former Pacific players, a lot of hungry Pacific players who were former Whitecaps. Marco Bustos, he said he wanted to score against them at BC Place. Obviously, this match won't be at BC Place, but I'm sure he won't mind scoring at Starlight instead. And I think we could genuinely see a big upset there.
Okay. If they beat TFC, I might put an asterisk on it. That's just because I'm a TFC homer. I'm just telling you. I mean, I got the asterisks loaded up. I may even have two asterisks, but because I think TFC may lose in this CAN champ in our current iteration.
Forge FC in the final.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, we got a final to play against Forge, and then we've got our bye in this year's tournament, and I have a feeling we're going to disappoint me on both counts. So I got my asterisks ready. That's all I have to say.
All right, Benny. Well, now after that, we'll let you go. Thanks again for coming on.
Always good to talk to you, Benny.
Certainly looking forward to covering this Canadian Championship over the next couple of weeks on the show.
Cheers, buddy.
Benedict Rhodes, man, growing up in front of our very eyes.
A force of nature, my friends. An absolute
I wanna next time we talk to him, I wanna hear about the next step he's taken. I want to hear Benny coming back and director of content, Canadian Premier League. Sorry, KJ, just coming right for your job. That's Benedict Rhodes right there. But yeah, some great stuff from Benny, of course.
Always.
So Canadian Championship, fellas. Is there something that you guys are looking forward to the most there? Obviously, that competition kicks off, or it's already kicked off. And is there anything that you're kind of looking forward to?
I mean, the Pacific Vancouver game for obvious reasons. Yeah,
that's top of the list right now for sure.
Yeah.
I think those obviously we're talking about the best team in the Canadian Premier League, and at least decent side from in terms of they'll definitely want revenge. Like Vancouver won't want to be the team that goes out to the CanPL side 2 years in a row, or I guess not quite in a row, but 2 tournaments in a row. So I think there's just so much intrigue surrounding that game.
Yeah, I mean, as Yvonne is saying, I'm looking forward to the off-delayed and soon to be forgotten 2020 version, the final between Forge and TFC, because I'm a masochist. And as soon as that's scheduled, I think it will be fun. But
let me pose it this way, Jeff. Has that game lost its hype after obviously the flurry of postponements? Has that game lost its hype?
No.
Is that just because you're both a Forge and TFC fan?
Yes. No, I don't. I don't think it's lost its hype. I think people are a bit blasé about it, but once the tickets are announced and then the hype train begins, I think we'll all remember how important a game it is. I mean, right now we've put it out of our priorities list because there's been no movement of the needle. So
But since there's no Champions League spot on the line, since they're just playing for a trophy, that's going to be a year, 2 years ago. Does it still mean the same?
I mean, no, obviously not. But the law of diminished returns is something we've been dealing with now for 2 years running, right? So it is what it is. And it's still silverware, and it's still bragging rights, and that's important. Forge is not taking CPL by storm this year. They've been usurped. They're in fourth place last I checked. This is the kind of thing that could make a potentially unsuccessful season a bit easier to swallow for the fan base that are used to just railroading the league. So it's a derby game. It's and it's the first of what we hope will be many. So at the end of the day, I think it's still important. Yeah.
It's not a derby game. It's not an intercity game.
It's a rivalry game.
There you go. But yeah, I actually do think it's lost a bit of its luster. I mean, it would be fun to see Toronto FC win 2 Voyageurs Cups in 1 year, as that being possible, or Forge for that matter, having that possibility. But I think from a Toronto FC perspective, I don't think we're going to see a very good TFC side in that game, just because, like you said, there's no Canadian or there's no CONCACAF roster on the line. Heck, maybe Benny's playing left fullback in that game. I think we very much see the young guns and some maybe even TFC 2 guys get rolled out in that game. So look, I think it's all on to 2021 for me. Unfortunately, the way things went, that 2020 final, I think will very much maybe become a forgotten game in the grand scheme of things. Not to
the supporters who win it. I think, and if TFC punts it, that's a lot of ammunition for the Forge supporters, for the Barton Street Battalion, right? I don't know.
I'm with you there, Mitch. I'm with you there. I think it's lost its luster. Definitely not for Canadian Premier League supporters, because that's, they're taking on an MLS team. They're taking on TFC. At the end of the day, that's going to be very, as people are saying in the chat, there's a lot of pride that go into that. But for TFC, I mean, you're playing for a trophy, which is something they always want. Obviously, 2 trophies could, I don't think it'll gloss over what happened this year, but it could, make it easier at least. But that being said, I'm with you there. I think they roll out the young guns, and there's not much to play for aside from a trophy that's 2 years old now.
I mean, to save them for the weekend to get destroyed by FC Cincinnati or Inter Miami at home, I don't understand the logic, right? At this point, it could be a month from now, and if we're in the same boat a month from now, I say roll out the A squad for the Can Champ, because it's at least something in what's quickly becoming a mathematically certain lost season, right? I don't know. I'm of the mind that you roll out your A team when your pride's on the line, especially when you're getting murked every weekend. So I don't know.
Well, I hate to look at it even this way, but just from a marketing standpoint, this game's going to be played at Tim Hortons Field. So, in terms of your home fans, you're probably going to want the best squad in front of them versus a game on the road, and that doesn't matter for much beyond a trophy. So I know that's not exactly how they think internally, but it might be, there's paying customers versus just whatever happens at Tim Hortons Field.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, sorry.
It's also a chance to roll out your young guns too, right? TFC have been trying to pick up points at every single point this season. They haven't had much. They haven't had much chance to afford the opportunity to roll out their young guns, and we are going through. I guess we're coming out the other side of a pandemic, hopefully, and there will be more opportunities moving forward. But it's one of those rare opportunities where you can actually go out there, roll out your young guns, and I think the fan base would be okay with that from a TFC perspective. Forge fans might not be too happy, but I personally think they can at least see the logic behind them doing that.
What kind of galaxy brain logic is that to roll out the young guns not during a weekday match against Team David Beckham, but at a cup final?
Because again, it's what the cup final means versus what the regular season still means for the club as a whole. I know we'll see what point we're at when this game. If this game, I'm still going to say if this game.
Yeah, you got to say if.
Who the heck knows? Gets played the regular season does matter more than this until it's literally mathematically impossible.
100%, and they are going to be playing a Canadian Premier League side, so it'll probably be the weakest competition they've played this season. No offense to Forge, which Forge is a fantastic Canadian Premier League side, but they're not an MLS side. So as I mentioned, like, it's an opportunity for TFC to, have some rotation in their roster finally. But as you said, a lot of it comes down to also when this game gets played. Now, Canada Soccer has said that this game's going to be played before July 2022. So there is a lot of time between now and then for when this game can get played. If TFC perhaps don't make the playoffs, and Forge isn't shaping up right now to have a strong run in the CONCACAF League, then maybe they play it at the end of like October or end of November or something like that. So if people are rested, then perhaps that's the case. But again,
that's a good shout, Mike. Actually,
yeah.
Once the dust is settled on disappointing seasons, just trot them out and let them eat each other. I think that's it's not a bad shout at all.
Yeah, and at this point, it's honestly like a lose-lose for TFC. Like, there's no, if they beat Forge, like, congrats, I guess. Because they're expected to beat Forge, are they not?
No,
they're the team with the high. You don't think so, Jeff?
Not this TFC squad. I think
they're still heavily expected to beat Forge.
Yeah, fine, by bookies that look on paper, but I mean, we've been watching this team for a while now. I don't think Forge has ever had a better chance of beating big bad TFC than they do right now.
Sure, but they're still heavy favorites.
Okay.
The TFC is the highest spending team, or could be the highest spending team in Major League Soccer.
Bottom of the table, doesn't matter. I mean, show me the proof of that roster, right? Like, there are a lot. I mean, John Carter was one of the most expensive flops. Ishtar, right? It's easy to spend money on garbage. At the end of the day, highest roster means nothing unless there's something to prove on it, right? We're bottom of the table. What are we patting ourselves on the back for spending money to achieve nothing? We're bottom of the table, guys.
I don't think that's what we're saying at all, but yeah, I don't know. I do think Toronto FC will go into that game as heavy.
I don't disagree. Of course,
yeah.
Just simply because of the tier that they play in, the league that they play in versus the other league that they play in, recency bias, paper bias, all that other stuff. I am saying that in their current incarnations with their current rosters, I don't think Ford has ever had a better opportunity to put one over on TFC.
Fair.
And I think
That's
the
fair.
Canadian Premier League in general, which makes this competition so interesting. Like, Montreal's had a pretty good season. They might be the favorites right now to win this thing, which make them back-to-back champions in some weird way, considering how odd this whole thing has got. But I definitely think that there's no really high-flying Canadian MLS team right now, which gives some of these Canadian Premier League teams, and the one-leg format gives them a chance to just pull off a couple upsets and go on a run here, which might make things fun. But look, we're 34 minutes into this show, and I can't believe we haven't gotten to this yet. But the fact that Michael Bradley didn't start an MLS game.
Weird.
We're talking about the transition a little bit and where the club goes from here, but he's been involved in 242 games, and 240 of those in MLS he's been a starter for. So this was an incredibly unique situation. I don't know how soon we'll see it again now with the Ralph Prizzo injury news, but yeah, what did you make of that? And I think it is a positive now that the club, that the new coach, Javier Perez, is willing to make this move, because, look, I think at this point of the season, it's pretty clear nobody's spot on this team should be safe. And if you're taking Michael Bradley out of games, and again, Michael Bradley, I think, has been one of Toronto FC's best players this season, at least most consistent players, but he hasn't been great as of late, so he comes out.
Yeah, I don't. It's hard to argue against it because of the way that Ralph Priso has played, right? And I think TFC right now, as Perez has been saying, like they're a team that's looking for energy. And I think, as we talked about last week, Jeff, with the other players that are on the pitch right now for TFC, they need energy because those other players don't necessarily offer the most. They don't cover the most ground, let's say, right? So when you have players in your midfield now who can get up and down the pitch more efficiently, then it's a better recipe for success than having someone who's still a very good player, but someone who's definitely aging in Michael Bradley, who isn't the same mobile Michael Bradley as he was 5 years ago. Which is
Go ahead.
I was going to say, which is why I think when TFC do play their next match Wednesday, Javier Perez, if you're watching this, please, because I know I want to see this because it actually had a lot of success last season. I want to see a midfield, a 4-2-3-1. I want to see Aro at right back. And then you have, if they're available, Omar and Chris Mavinga. And then I'm a toss-up for me right now between Justin Morrow and Kamar Lawrence as the back four. And then the two center mids, holding mids, I want to see Jonathan Osorio on the left and Mark Delgado on the right. Because those guys had a ton of chemistry last year. They found a lot of success when Michael Bradley was down injured. And it's proven to be worked, and they offer a lot of energy. And then you have Pozuelo as the number 10, obviously. And on the right wing, I want to see Richie Larea. Because we've seen what he can do when he's freed up down the right-hand side. Obviously, the left Soteldo and Achara up top. I think that's a recipe for success. Now, again, a lot of it goes into that. But I would love to see that midfield because when Michael Bradley wasn't in the game and there was more energy in the midfield, it worked. Like TFC looked a lot more dangerous. They looked like they were covering a lot more ground. And they looked like, honestly, they were a team that was playing on the front foot and a team that was tougher to play against. Now, this isn't, again, Michael Bradley's class act in Toronto. This isn't meant to be a shot at him at all. But at the end of the day, I think there are better options there in center mid for this current makeup of this team. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that at all.
Mitch?
I don't know if it's always the case, but I do think that Bradley can't play any game anymore. I think it matters which opponent you're playing, what the style they have looks like. Like I do think there's still games where Michael Bradley should absolutely be a starter, and I think that's more games than not. But I think there are also teams that you're going to come up against where, you do want a little bit more pace and a little bit more of what Osorio Delgado can provide in the midfield. I certainly agree that that's probably their best combo right now, and maybe even Ralph over one of those two, that being Delgado, if and when he gets healthy again. Just considering what we've seen from him recently, which has been really, really good, like top class stuff from Ralph. So yeah, I think it depends on the opponent, but I do think that you need to be willing to take Michael Bradley out when it just doesn't make sense to have him in there. And again, I think that's not that often in a season, but I do think it will happen more and more as we move forward.
Yep. I think it has to be an option on the table. For so long, it hasn't. It's just not been possible. And I think we're starting to see a situation now, baby steps, into a position where he's not a starter 100% of the time. And there's a willingness both from the player and the gaffer to adjust and maybe sit him, maybe sub him out, or have him start on the bench, or not even dress him at all in some situations. And I think that it's long overdue. And it's not a knock on the player. It's a knock. I think, having Michael shield, having Brader shield Omar and Zavs especially is a recipe for disaster. So if we don't have Mavinga on the field, I think, having Bradley out there maybe becomes a bit of a liability. So his minutes may be incumbent on Mavinga's health, which is, again, this sort of like causality between who can play with each other and this lack of depth and how quickly the whole apple cart goes down if one person isn't available for selection is a nightmare situation right now. But I, in terms of Bradley, there has to be an adaptability. I don't like Mitch said, nobody should be guaranteed starting on this team. I think the game plan has to take precedent.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe this lights a fire under Michael Bradley. Obviously he was first, as Mitch mentioned, like one of the first times he's ever come off the bench. Maybe he takes that as a little bit of a slate to him. Okay, I need to step my game up. Who knows? And Bradley comes back and returns to how good Michael Bradley that we know he can be. And when he controls and dictates all the tempo in the middle of the park. Again, a lot of that comes down to how TFC want to play. But if they want to play like they have been the last match and a half, then I'm finding it tough to find ways to include Michael Bradley in that.
Would be nice to have Liam Fraser right now. That's all I'm saying. Would be nice.
Another midfielder for our tank, like guys that deserve minutes aren't getting them. It'd be nice to have attackers as opposed. I would trade 100 Liam Frasers for a decent number 9 at this point. So,
Well, I mean, speaking of attackers, let's get into it because I think people in the comments section have been asking about it, and I want to hear this debate because honestly, I've been away for a couple of games, so I haven't really watched Toronto FC as closely as I wanted to or usually would, and have been hearing as per usual some very conflicting reports on a certain Jefferson Soteldo, his value that he brings to this team. Whether he's a designated player at all, there've been some tweets mentioning he's a TAM level player. And I think
tip to Dwayne Rollins. That was Dwayne's knee jerk tweet.
There you go. Yeah, I want to hear both sides of the debate, and I think we have both sides to some extent on this show. So, who wants to start here?
Jeff, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff. I want to hear your reasoning.
Listen, I unfortunately, my wife and I were in section 112, so we were on the exact perfect angle to watch the second half. Jeff attacking for that game, and I cannot tell you how disappointing it was, and I think the most profound disappointment was how often Paz and Jeff found themselves in the exact same space created on the wing, and then had to make these piddly little, not even ticky-tacky passes, but like almost tripping over each other. And that was alarming. I mean, that goes above and beyond all of my problems with Jeff's game, and they are legion. But the fact that it seemed to limit Paz's ability to be the magician that he's proven to be, I think that cannot be ignored. And I don't know what's going on there. Is it that they've both been given too free a role and they both have the same instincts, in which case I want Paz in that space because I know what we've got in Paz. He's the reigning MVP. I don't want Jeff jumping over his feet and limiting his options. It's what Dwayne said. It's getting very difficult to it's getting very difficult to agree with this signing as a DP level signing. This team didn't need another winger, and I don't. And at the end of the day, sometimes a deal that's too good to be true is too good to be true for a reason, and you have to be strong enough to leave it in the store and not buy that extra dress that you think you might wear, or that extra suit that you think you might wear just because it's on deep discount, because it may just be sitting in your closet forever.
Yeah, I completely disagree.
I know you do. You do.
I'm not even I don't know how. Listen, at the end of last game, especially towards the end of last game, very frustrating where Soteldo would beat his defender down the line, and some of his crosses would go right to the goalkeeper. They'd go out of bounds. That part was extremely frustrating. But how can anyone look at this guy and tell me he's not a designated player? That to me doesn't doesn't make sense to me whatsoever.
He's so much fun to watch, Mike.
It's not even about how fun he is to watch. It's how effective he's been.
We lost. We're eking out draws. What effectiveness? I mean,
but that all falls on Soteldo's shoulders.
He's a designated player. Some of it does. He can't.
So hold on.
Why
are we ignoring the elephant in the room then? There's 2 designated players on the pitch. Mm-hmm. TFC have a designated player number 9. How are we pointing at the fingers at Soteldo, who is outplaying New England Revolution, constantly beating his guy down the line when his guy knows he's going down the line? But yet we point fingers at Jefferson Soteldo and say he's the issue on this roster. Like clearly the issue is Josie Altidore.
Josie's a humongous issue. Absolutely.
That's the issue though.
But Josie was an issue when we were courting signing Jefferson Soteldo. This is so instead
of have that on your roster, you're using a designated player spot on a number 9.
Sure.
And you have Ayo Akinola, by the way, which we're just overlooking, that just had a season-ending injury. So you have depth there at number 9. Plus you had Dom Dwyer coming to the mix. Who knew what Dom Dwyer would be? There's no way you can tell me that the best position that TFC needed to sign this season was a number 9. When you're already investing a DP spot in that number 9. You have Ayo Akinola, who led MLS in goals per 90 at number 9. And you have someone like a Dom Dwyer at number 9. Let alone Patrick Mullins as well, and Jordan Perusa.
Hey man, no slouching Patrick Mullins. I love Patrick Mullins. Start him every game.
But there's no way that's the main need. There's no way you have that. You're betting on the fact Josie Altidore can bounce back. You have to bet on that fact because you're using a player spot on him.
They were actively pursuing Bore. So somebody with smarts in that organization.
Hold on. How do we know that?
It was when there's smoke, there's fire. And even if they weren't
again, we're going off of but potentially they were.
Okay, potentially they were, which suggests that somebody in that organization said, we got a whole lot of variables here at the head of our attack. We've got a DP player who hasn't been performing for years, who's dropping off a cliff, but is an albatross contract.
But you said yourself you would never bet against Josie Altidore. You said multiple times.
Pardon?
You've said multiple times that you would never bet against Josie Altidore.
Right, but I would also never have him be my sole number 9 option at the head of the attack.
They weren't. Ayo Akinola
was healthy and
also
that factor too.
But also an unproven concept. Ayo Akinola had 1 good year.
You have those as your number 9. You have those already at your number 9. Like you're regardless, those are invested. You can't change that.
Okay.
So you have to work with what you have.
Do you or do you not think that signing Soteldo was at least influenced by the fact that Santos had to get rid of him and we could get him at a discount?
Yes, when you get a player of Soteldo's caliber at that price, you cannot pass that up. I don't think any team in Major League Soccer would say no to Jefferson Soteldo on their roster.
And no team on Major League Soccer would say no to P.T. Martinez or Ezequiel Barco. Same difference. And they're having the same effect on their team.
Jeff, you called Soteldo, Erickson Gallardo, and Armando Cooper. Mm-hmm. Like, I know he hasn't been your favorite this season, but come on, he's proven you wrong there. And I think he'll prove
he's proven more points already than them.
You think Soteldo's Erickson Gallardo?
No, but I don't think he's the second coming of sliced bread. I mean, the guy can dribble. That's great. His crosses are Schaffelberg quality.
What about like the stat where he was in on TFC's 6 of his last 7 goals came through Jefferson Soteldo. What about that stat?
Hold on, I'm just reading this. Listen, are we winning games? Is he changing games?
You can't pin that on one player.
He has to have some of the responsibility. This isn't a TAM player. This isn't an academy signing.
Okay, but what about Pozuelo then?
Millions of dollars. What about Pozuelo? He's the reigning MVP, and
has he been reigning MVP status this season?
Yeah, but he's been it once. What's Soteldo?
24 years old, coming into his first season in Major League Soccer.
Listen, he's a techie winger. It's fun. He's great to watch. But this hand waving away, everybody is saying, "Oh, get him a new squad." Well, why did we sign him if we have to burn the whole team down to the ground to have any success with this guy? Like.
So you're saying if TFC got a number 9, TFC's fixed?
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that a number 9 was a way better thing to look for than another luxury winger. This is a salary cap.
I don't think so. I think it's a chicken and egg situation, Jeff, because if you get that number, like it doesn't matter who the number 9 is. It's the service that's been part of the issue, and then you also have, the finishing, which has been an issue as well. There's been 2, maybe 3 Toronto FC players who've had good offensive seasons. 2,
Okay.
I would say.
That being
Nola, who's out for the year, and Jonathan Osorio, who's been quietly very solid offensively. So you have no one finishing the chances, and you didn't have many chances being created in general. So at least Soteldo solves one of those issues in the sense that he's been creating a lot of chances for Toronto FC. So if you get a number 9, you're in the same spot because sure, you have someone to finish those chances, but there's no one else to create those chances other than Pozuelo. So I think there's a lot that's broken here, and I think that pinning it on Soteldo.
I'm not pinning it on Soteldo. I'm not pinning anything on Jefferson Soteldo. I'm just saying that I see a humongous disconnect between people that are like, he's an exciting player, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just wait for it all to click, and we're waiting, and I see nothing.
Yeah.
But
what
also,
happened
Jeff,
to the stat that Soteldo literally was on TFC's last 6 of their 7 goals? What happened to that stat?
Cool. We're bottom.
It's not a luxury winger.
We're bottom of the table.
But again, you're pinning it on Soteldo.
No, I'm just saying a DP. Like, we can throw out all these stats and say, isn't it wonderful that he's contributed to the goals?
Pozuelo's not doing it. So what about Pozuelo? Maybe we should get rid of him too.
Who would you rather have on the team, Jeff or Pozuelo?
At this point in their careers? Jefferson's set 24. Pozuelo's, 31?
No, he's not 31
29,
yet.
I think.
29. I don't think he's over 30 yet.
Oh, let me check that. Maybe you guys are right. But yeah, sure, he's 30. Okay, yeah, 29,
maybe
turning
just
30.
30. Yeah.
Yeah, turns 30 in September. Like, again, I think you need both of those pieces on their team. I don't think it's one or the other. I think the problem, again, that which we're just overlooking is the fact that they don't have that third designated player. And that third DP should, in theory, be this number 9 that you're hoping for, which he's just hasn't been. So instead of us bickering about Pozuelo or Soteldo,
I love you guys. I'm not.
Yeah, no, you know what I mean. But instead of us arguing about Pozuelo or Soteldo, like, we should be putting our focus on the fact that TFC's designated player number 9 is not a designated player number 9.
That's just a given at this point. That's a given to me.
But then, if that's just a given, then I don't know, man. Then we're arguing about hypotheticals here that are construed because of the fact that they have no number 9.
Okay.
And if
agreed. It's hot in here, so my brain is not
healthy. I don't know if we're having this conversation either. Ayo Akinola's out for the season, right? And he is that number 9. So I don't know.
I will also say, and again, this is limited sample size because I haven't watched like full games, but I've liked what I've seen from Achara, and maybe he's a solution there, at least for the next little bit, because I really like what I've seen from him, and I think that he has a lot of those qualities that we get from best case Josie and from Ayo as well. I guess.
I mean, I think the hyperbole on Ayo is pretty major. He's not a proven commodity. He has a potential. He's a prospect. He's not. He had one good year. There's got to.
What about this year?
There's got to be consistency.
So wait, what about this year then, Jeff?
The only thing that's consistent is that he gets injured and breaks hamstrings and goes out for extended periods of time. So, I mean,
yeah, that's why you're wilding out right now, Jeff.
I disagree. I think coulda, shoulda, woulda. We're at the bottom of the table, man. Like, when do we start saying maybe these guys aren't as good as we think they are? Like, or maybe they're not ready for prime time yet. Like, where's Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy? It's time to bring out this guy that everybody wants, but he's not even getting any minutes. Like, where is the quality?
He's injured, by the way.
Well, again, I mean, where's the quality? Surprise, surprise! Another TFC player is injured. Like,
hey, they've kept their team pretty healthy this season, aside from major injuries to major players, which is honestly some bad luck. But for the most part, they've kept their team healthy. But regardless, man, again, I think just circling back and kind of wrapping this all up, the problem is not, in my opinion at least, is not Jefferson Soteldo or Alejandro Pozuelo. Like you got to look at a lot of the pieces around them, and in particular, you have to look at the fact that TFC's designated player number 9 is not a designated player anymore. And obviously, again, you couple that with the injury to Ayo Akinola, then of course we're going to be asking where the heck is this team getting goals from, because those were supposed to be our 2 major providers of goals. So I hear you, Jeff, because you know it's really results oriented that you're thinking out of an attacking DP.
And there's also a standard for a designated player. And I don't think we've hit that standard. And he's not Seba, and I'm not comparing him to Seba. I'm not doing that.
I don't think anyone in the league is Seba, by the way.
There'll never be another Seba.
Right.
But
let's make that clear.
We need to score goals. He's an attacking player. We're paying a lot of money to, and we're not scoring goals. He's gun shy. His crosses leave a lot to be desired. This was a target of opportunity, and we thought it was a great deal. We have to swoop in and get it, and I take issue with that kind of thinking, because it doesn't address a need. It addresses a want and a desire, and you can get.
I think it did address a need, though. But anyways, we're just gonna go in circles here because.
I mean, I don't see anything that he does that Schaff couldn't have done, maybe without the dribbling, or Endo.
That's insane.
I've never seen Mitch's face like that. That's the first time on this show I've seen Mitch's face like that.
There's more to soccer than fancy 1v1 dribbles.
We need to clip Mitch's face. That is going to be the sell for our show forever.
I'm sorry. I think there's more to the game than fancy dribbles. There has to be.
There is a lot more of the game than fancy dribbles, and I don't know, man. I think you're missing a lot of what Soteldo does. He keeps possessions in areas of the park that's probably the toughest to keep possession in. The ball,
and then nothing happens. What do we need the possession for if nothing comes of it?
But so that's on Soteldo.
That's on, because usually they're aimless crosses. Like he doesn't. There's no one running into them.
That's
they're just. Oh, aimless back passes to pause, and then
at the end of last game, I'll agree. A lot of it was aimless crosses, but he still is whipping in like 4 or 5 good balls a game that no one's getting on the end of. It's Achara. Maybe you're telling me he didn't play one good ball that game.
I mean, from what I saw, they were going straight to the keeper. And the 2 guys that were marking him for New England were happy to give him that. There was
one play off the top of my head where Soteldo cut in on his right foot during the first half and whipped in a diagonal far post that had BMO Field like in awe. Like 100%, that was a gorgeous ball that Soteldo played in. And then there's a couple other plays where he's cutting in the middle, linking up with Pause, and laying it off to Markey, and Mark's not shooting. Like there's little things like that we're just overlooking because there's no end result. What about the countless times? I think there was like 4 or 5 times where Pozuelo inside the 18-yard box plays a gorgeous no-look pass to Kamar Lawrence doing overlap run, and he puts in a wayward cross. Why is no one talking about that?
You want to talk about Kamar Lawrence?
I don't want to talk about that.
Also, I guess, we've probably run way too long on this, but I think it is what the people wanted to hear, so it's worth it.
I'm ashamed that I'm not up to the challenge because I'm melting, but
that's all
I'm
right.
I'm sure we'll have more conversations about it, so we'll be fine.
Let's not forget that the one Toronto FC goal did come off Jefferson Soteldo beating 2 guys and finding Pozuelo pretty wide open in the box, and then he was able to obviously find Osorio, so I think him being ineffective is obviously a little hyperbolic, but I would like to see more from him in terms of results as well. But to Mike's point, I don't think you can pin all of that or even most of that on him, because I think there's so many other deficiencies in this team right now that are being obviously shown. I don't even know where to move on from here because I threw a match there and wanted to see what kind of fire it would spark, but even I didn't expect it to result in that. So I guess we can just quickly look at the week ahead for Toronto FC. We've mentioned before that we think this week is pretty make or break for the team.
I agree.
yeah, I guess what are we thinking about these two games and the chance that Toronto FC has to, maybe make one last grasp for a playoff spot?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it there, Mitch. It's one last grasp for a playoff spot, and as we said, earlier on the show, it's you got to win at least one of these games, if not both of these games. Like TFC, it's at the point where they've dug themselves a big hole where they need to pull out wins right now. And as Jonathan Osorio said, I'll throw this in here. I think this is the same thing with Atlanta. No one's looking at TFC right now and thinking they're actually a last place team. Like when teams go to TFC, they know they're not going to be facing just some sort of laughing stock. Like they are a decent team because of the quality of players on their roster. But this has to translate into results, and it's the same thing with Atlanta United. Atlanta United puts a lot of money into their roster. They have a lot of quality on their roster, but it hasn't translated into results. So something's got to give, and hopefully that it's in TFC's direction, because these are both two teams that are desperately looking for 3 points. So it starts tomorrow, and hopefully it's going to be TFC coming out on the winning end of things.
Yeah, I mean, what are we really fighting for now? We're fighting for a playoff berth where we're almost guaranteed to not have any home games. So I mean, my question is this: because there are so many deficiencies in the team, because we're hanging on to bad contracts, ineffective players, we're up against the cap, we have no roster spots left, at the end of this week, do we start switching our focus to starting to see who we've got for the rest of the season towards the next one?
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
But yeah, there is definitely the potential exists that could be the case, that you need to start thinking longer term. I think the transitions sort of started, but not as much as we would like it to have in terms of moving on from some of the older players. So I think you really, if you don't get a win this week, you really have to start thinking about, which of the younger players even really have a future with this team.
Yep.
Which of the older players really have a future with this team. Let's try some different things. Let's get Javier Perez to take a deep dive into his website and see what different tactical nuances he can try out here,
absolutely,
and how they'll affect the side. And yeah, look, I think they, from the 2018-2019 transition, like there is proof of concept that you can get this club back on its, and even just the parity in MLS. It doesn't have to be a multi-year down. You can get the club back to winning again pretty easily, but you have to obviously make some tough decisions, and that's going to be the case if they roll over this next week.
Yeah, because I mean, it just seems like there's so much flotsam now. Mm-hmm. There's so much dead weight on this roster from top to bottom, and it's got to be cleared house.
For me, Jeff, I think there's only two major issues on this roster. Major issues, and that's your DP number 9, who's not a designated player. Imagine how much more value you could get out of someone who's as good as a Soteldo or Pozuelo as a number 9. Imagine that on TFC. Like, that's scary. And the second one is you got to find a better option to replace Omar Gonzalez. I think if those two, then honestly, that transition becomes a lot easier. Because if you can bring in a first choice center back as well as a DP number 9, this TFC team's looking a lot more enticing to me.
I agree, but I think that's the first step. I mean, I want to know what we've got in some of these names lower down on the depth chart that we've been talking about for a long time. The clock hasn't stopped. I want to know what's up with the Okellos of the world. I want to know what's up with the Jaquil Marshall Ruddys of the world. I want to know what's up with the Jaden Nelsons of the world. There's and if they're not ready for prime time, then we need, we've got an academy. There has to be a turnover, right? Like, I just want to know what we've got. Because let's say we would get a new number 9, right? Well, if they go down and get injured, we are in the exact same space we were with this current, not DP number 9. I want to know that we've got guys waiting in the wings. I want to know what kind of depth we have, because we talk about it often. But at the end of the day, when we're forced to examine that depth, these guys are invisible. They don't get minutes. So what are we talking about here? I want answers to a lot of those questions. And I think that if we're out of the playoffs, we need to focus on answering those questions.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Michael, do you have an injury report this week that we can run before we?
I could, yeah.
Hold on.
Let's do that.
Got to do it right though.
It's the Michael Singh injury report.
It's been a while. I love it.
I tweet one out before every game, but since I see you in the chat just blowing it up, I got you, man. I got you. All right, so Josie Altidore, first off. Apparently, according to Javier Perez, he was dealing with a lingering issue in his lower leg. And this past week, obviously last week leading up to the game, it became essentially unbearable for him, where he couldn't play, he couldn't partake, so he needed to stop. Now, I don't know exactly what that lingering issue is, but what's happened is TFC now, I don't have a timeline for Josie Altidore for his return. We don't know when the next time we're going to see Josie Altidore. And as we talk about, like, where's TFC getting their goals from, that's another issue, is the fact that Josie Altidore is going to be sidelined for the next little bit. He's already been ruled out for tomorrow's match against Atlanta. So, I don't know how long it'll take for him to get better. I don't know if he'll be back, maybe next game, but it doesn't sound like it's something that's going to be too short term. Just reading in between the lines, no one really sounds too optimistic right now in terms of whatever that situation is. So again, I don't know what the exact injury is, but something definitely to keep an eye on moving forward. Again, Tsubasa Endo, we talked about him, I think, 2 weeks ago. A longer-term injury. Tsubasa is going to be out for a little while.
Great.
Iowa Canola is obviously done for the season. And then Ralph Priso, I guess positive news after the way that he limped off after last match. It looked like he was a very serious injury on a ridiculous play that should have been blown down.
Completely unnecessary injury, too. It's so frustrating.
Exactly. And it looked really bad, but it seems as though it's not as bad as it first looked. He'll be out at least this game or the next game, and the next game, I'd say. But after that, potentially there's room for him to return again. I don't know what the exact diagnosis is, but it doesn't sound like it's as bad as it looked. Yeah, as it looked. Yeah,
it looked horrific, man. It looked like he did his knee in, man. So
yeah, exactly. And then Dom Dwyer, he hasn't been available like the last 2-3 games. Again, questionable for tomorrow against Atlanta United. There's a chance he does play, but it's a lower body injury. Mm-hmm. And then Jaquil is questionable as well for tomorrow with the whatever's undisclosed. So that's it. That's the injury report this week. And, it hasn't been, as I mentioned off the bat, like, credit to TFC. It could have been a lot worse on the injury front this year. I think they salvaged a lot of that. And thankfully, it's kept my injury reports a lot shorter, because I remember at the beginning of the season, man, I was finding trouble, fitting all the characters into one tweet.
And you raise a really good point. I actually expected, once we started playing at home again and we were doing road trips to different venues, that the injury report would be monumental, that suddenly everybody would go down. So credit to the medical staff. I know I've been giving them a lot of grief at the beginning of the season. This is much less than I expected. The vagary around the actual injuries is kind of annoying, and there's been quite a bit of blowback on social media with respect to why we're not getting a more specific injury. Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you don't know. It doesn't all have to be smoke and mirrors, right?
Have you ever seen Bruce Arena do a press conference and he's asked about his injuries? It's hilarious. He doesn't give you. He's like, "Why are you asking about injuries?"
That's what they're playing. What is it? Carlos Heal's injury, real close to the chest at New England.
Exactly.
So it can always be worse. And we're not we're not owed those detailed explanations, right? But
not the detailed ones, but we definitely are required to get
they're
some
required
sort of
to disclose an
Yeah.
injury, but they don't have to tell you exactly what it is, right?
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
So I mean, it could be smoke and mirrors. It could be that they don't know. It could be gamesmanship. It could just be embarrassment because everybody's breaking they're getting lower muscle injuries, and that seems to be pervasive at this club. But at least we know who is and who isn't. Is I guess what we're and it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be at this point in the season.
There we go. All right, Mitch. I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Absolutely. Before we do, just quickly wanted to mention, as Colin said in the comments, Canada men's national team tickets go on sale to the general public tomorrow, and obviously 2 massive World Cup qualifiers coming up against Honduras on the 2nd and then El Salvador on the 8th. Look, we know obviously there's going to be COVID restrictions. We don't know what the situation will look like by then, but if you're comfortable and if you have the opportunity, get down to BMO Field. Let's make sure that this atmosphere is befitting of this new Canada team that we have and the incredible players that are on the roster, because this team really has the opportunity here to do something special. And it does start with having a good home environment where they really feel cheered on. And we know the impact that can make. We saw what that did for Canada against the United States back in October 2019. Having something similar to that is just going to carry this team through World Cup qualifying. So buy your tickets, get out. We'll see all of you there, and so excited to get back to live Canada games at BMO Field.
And they're reasonably priced too. Reasonably priced, starting at $25. So guys, if you're looking for something to do Thursday evening, get your tickets, and I'm sure it'll be very enjoyable. I promise you won't regret seeing this new generation in action, especially when you consider Alphonso Davies is back and he's worth the price of admission on his own.
Absolutely. So, without question, he's worth the price of admission. Now that's a DP. That's a
yeah, just sign Fonzie. Let's go.
Yeah.
No
does
complaints
he fit
there.
a need, Jeff? Does he fit a need? No, okay.
He's a wingback, Jeff. He's a wingback. It's a luxury player, Jeff.
I do not say all wingers are luxury players. Man, Arjen Robben in his prime. That's DP material. Anyway, we'll talk about this next week and every other week since then. But
absolutely. Let's wrap things up there, though. Huge thank you to friend of the show, Benedict Rhodes of CanPL.ca, for stopping by and all his insights on the Canadian Premier League. Thanks, as always, to Sophia, Kevin, and Edwin from Footy Talks for making the show possible. Thank you to all of you for listening and interacting. Please, if you haven't already, go leave us a rating and review on whatever podcast app of your choice. It does make a big difference in terms of supporting the show. So on behalf of Michael Singh and Jeffrey P. Nesker, my name is Mitchell Tierney. Till next Tuesday.
Cheers, guys.